Good evening. The biggest story today is, of course, the loss of the Space Shuttle Challenger. Since its beginning, the U.S. military has been greatly involved with America's space program, and today's launch was no exception. 3 of the 7 crew members had military backgrounds. Challenger's pilot, 40-year-old Michael Smith, flew missions in Vietnam and was awarded the Navy's Distinguished Flying Cross. The former Navy pilot said all he ever wanted to do was fly.
Far back as I can remember, all I ever wanted to do was fly. And when I was a young kid coming up, of course, the space program was just getting started, and my interest just naturally from the flying aspects went over to wanting to fly into space. And it's just something that I've wanted to do all my life. And I don't know how I got interested. I can't tell you. I just have always been interested in doing flying.
Flight Commander Francis Dick Scobie was making his second shuttle flight. Scobie, also a Vietnam vet, was a former Air Force test pilot. He saw this shuttle mission as having special significance, that being crew member Krista McAuliffe. He said the teacher astronaut would be a role model for young Americans.
The lasting part is going to be the idea that she puts in the head of both teachers and students to expect to be in space. In other words, their future, space is part of their future. They expect to live and work there. And if she can do that, she's doing a lot for mankind.
Another former military crew member was Mission Specialist Ellison Onizuka. He was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. The native Hawaiian was also making his second shuttle flight. Elsewhere, according to a Marine Corps spokesman, Lance Corporal Robert Pounds, one of 2 Marines charged in the November shooting death of a Korean woman, is facing a general courts-martial in Japan. Pounds and another Marine, both assigned to the 12th Marine Regiment, are charged with manslaughter and assault. The Stars and Stripes says the incident occurred on November 8th when an M16 rifle carried by one of the men accidentally discharged, fatally injuring the woman. The Marine spokesman adds that the assault charge stems from actions that occurred while both men were in a moving vehicle. The spokesman says both Marines pointed and fired M16 weapons with blank rounds without regard for safety or regulations. The U.S. Navy is testing sailors stationed in Japan for exposure to the AIDS virus. A spokesman says the testing began earlier this month at Yokosuka Naval Base near Tokyo. According to United Press International, sailors testing positive on 3 tests will be shipped back to the States for further treatment. President Ferdinand Marcos of the Philippines has been criticized throughout his 20 years of power, but since the assassination 2 years ago of his most powerful opponent, the Marcos regime has been under increasing pressure to reform. Tonight, as we continue our special series on the Philippine condition, we'll see how the political turmoil has affected the island nation's economy.
Our 2 peoples enjoy a close friendship, one forged in shared history and common ideals.
We learn to love these ideals and principles.
That was 4 years ago. Since then, relations between the U.S. and the Philippines have soured, posing a crisis in the Pacific. The Reagan administration fears the island nation of the Philippines could be on the brink of collapse.
What do you think of Marcos? He's a son of a bitch!
At the center of the storm is Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos. Some blame him for many of his country's social and economic problems.
The Filipino entrepreneur, who normally is a risk taker, does not have the necessary climates in order to make the necessary investments.
The unstable political climate, the devaluating Philippine currency, and general economic depression have led to plant closures and labor strikes. Once rivaling Japan as the economic leader of the Far East, the Philippines is now one of its poorest economies.
The government itself has very little, if any, credibility at all. And the economy is in a shambles, and the people are hungry. And these are all ingredients of a violent revolution.
That poverty is no more apparent than here at Smoky Mountain, a garbage dump doubling as home for thousands of Filipinos. The stench is awful, the frenzy pathetic. Entire families rummage through the filth, looking for anything they can use or sell.
Yung mga basura po. Anong klaseng basura? Mga plastiko.
This lady doesn't even have a dump to call home. She sleeps in the park, but she does have an appeal.
Marcos, you help me please.
Marcos has not answered these pleas for help. Critics say this grinding poverty is the most important reason why the Marcos regime is under attack. This is Sandra Ginyep reporting.
American support of the Marcos regime is designed to protect our military bases. But in tomorrow's report, we'll look at a growing danger, the threat of a communist takeover. And speaking of a communist takeover, the Reuters news service says the Philippine military has declared a red alert and is calling out special anti-guerrilla teams. Philippine officials say communist death squads are roaming Manila in an effort to wreck next month's presidential elections. Western diplomats say the decision to put the capital's paramilitary police on the highest level of combat readiness prior to the election does not come as a surprise. President Marcos told leaders of his ruling party to clamp down on election fraud and violence. The move is seen as a way to convince U.S. leaders that he has no intention of winning the election by cheating. There's another possible spy case involving U.S. military personnel. The AP says a U.S. Air Force Airman First Class is in custody for allegedly trying to pass intelligence information to the Soviet Union. 25-year-old Bruce Ott is in pretrial confinement at Beale Air Force Base in California. He's charged with trying to pass information on the Air Force super-secret SR-71 surveillance aircraft. The SR-71 is unofficially known as the Blackbird and is a long-range reconnaissance jet, routinely used for intelligence-gathering missions. The airman worked as an administrative clerk in a squadron that's part of the 9th Strategic Reconnaissance Wing. An American Air Force navigator is reported missing. His Australian F-111 bomber crashed into the sea off the south coast of Australia. The Royal Australian Air Force says Gregory Angel, 34, of California, was the navigator of the aircraft, and Australian was the pilot. An RAAF spokesman says a concentrated search is continuing for the two men in the hope that they may have ejected to safety and survived in their escape capsule. The tests were just unrealistic. UPI says that's what a veteran House of Representatives investigator is charging. AFKN's Jim Heller says that the claim being made against the Army's Bradley fighting vehicle and the Air Force's Maverick anti-tank missile.
At a Washington hearing, investigator Anthony Batista told members of Congress the Pentagon rigged tests performed on both items. His testimony centered on the Army's replacement for the M13 troop carrier, the Bradley fighting vehicle. He says the Army should consider scrapping the $11.3 billion Bradley, expressing concerns about the vulnerability of the system. Defending the Bradley, Army Vice Chief of Staff General Maxwell Thurmond says the tests conducted at the Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland were, in his words, totally legitimate. Thus far, Congress has funded almost 3,000 of the Army's requested 6,800 Bradleys. Army Sergeant Jim Heller, AFKN News, Seoul.
While the Bradley is still in the production stage, one old Army standby is gone. The venerable Jeep faded away this week after 4 decades of production. Workers at the American Motors plant in Toledo, Ohio, shouted, "Keep the Jeep," as the last one rolled off the assembly line. The AP says about 1,000 of the plant's 8,600 workers will lose their jobs as a result of the Jeep's demise. The safest base in Pacific Air Forces? That's the title earned recently by Hickam Air Force Base, Hawaii. The people at Hickam won the 1985 PACAF Safe Base Award for having fewer government vehicle accidents than any other base in the command, averaging just 1 accident for every 67,000 miles driven. Kadena Air Base in Japan was last year's winner, with an average of 1 accident for every 60,000 miles. Coming up this evening, weather with Sergeant Marty Sprankle and For the Love of Time. Those stories and more when the AFKN News Hour continues.
emphasis on both sides.
Where is that paper?
What we offer you is personal and professional growth.
How did I ever get into this?
We feel that the student should be an effective leader for the Air Force as well as an effective individual. Anyone have an answer?
Confidence in yourself and the people who work for you.
Good answer, Sergeant. Anybody else?
The Air Force NCO Leadership School for personal and professional growth.
Good evening. Many more days like today and spring fever will be going around. A really nice day today with temperatures in the 40s and even 50s down south, and after that cold spell over the weekend, it felt even warmer than that. I wish I could tell you that it's going to continue, but the fact is we do have a weather system moving at us which should bring rain to the southern third of the rock and snow, or possibly a mixture here in the north starting later this evening. Now, it sounds like my forecast from yesterday is turning out pretty good, but as we take a look at the satellite picture now, I'll show you why it just wasn't really that great. The system that was supposed to bring the precipitation this evening just blew past us this morning, causing a short period of cloudiness, which you can see now out in the Sea of Japan, rather, but absolutely no precipitation in any form. The frontal system in central China now, though, appears to be stronger, and along with the low-level moisture left in the Yellow Sea from this morning's system, should produce the rain and snow for tonight, ending by midday tomorrow countrywide with colder temperatures behind it. Around Asia today, warmer temperatures across Asia, with Vladivostok up to 19 degrees under partly cloudy skies. Not quite spring fever time there yet, but warmer. Tokyo mostly cloudy with 49, and Taiwan up to 72 degrees today with partly cloudy skies. Looking at the Korea weather map, low this morning 12 degrees in Hongseong. High this afternoon was 52 in Pohang, Busan, and in Daegu. Gwangju up to 49, and Seoul reaching 39 degrees. Forecast for this evening, increasing cloudiness this evening starting in the western areas with snow or a mixture of rain and snow in the north, and rain in the southern one-third starting later this evening. Right now it looks to be between 9 o'clock and midnight. Winds will be southeasterly to westerly at 5 to 15 miles per hour. Temperatures will range from the low 20s to mid-30s, Seoul dropping to 24, Camp Page down to 20 degrees, and Daegu 27. Tomorrow the precipitation will be ending by midday with a gradual clearing. Winds will become westerly to northwesterly at 10 to 20 miles per hour. Temperatures will be colder from the high 20s to the high 30s. Seoul reaching 30 degrees, Camp Page 32, and Daegu up to 38 degrees. The outlook for Friday, partly to mostly cloudy skies and colder temperatures. Ernie?
All right, thank you, Marty. Some say time is of the essence, and for one man in Tucson, Arizona, time has become the most important thing in his life. As a matter of fact, it was time that saved his life.
For those who say there's never enough time, welcome to the room where there's almost nothing but time. In fact, there's something of an overabundance of it here. This is the home of Bill McClure, keeper of clocks.
Yeah, I found one just exactly like this, the same color and type, a Gilbert. It gave me the idea that started all of this.
What this is a collection of 122 clocks, all but 3 of them the wind-up kind. Clocks from all over the globe, some more than 100 years old. It takes 45 minutes each morning to wind them all. For most, this sort of thing would be simply a hobby, but for McClure, it's a type of therapy. McClure is a reformed alcoholic. What began as recreational drinking turned into an obsession that cost him jobs, his health, all he owned, and almost his life.
Well, each one of these clocks, especially the mantle clocks, which are your more expensive clocks, represent a binge that could have killed me or some innocent person out on the highway. And instead of a good drunk, I've got a good clock.
For the past 2 years, McClure has been searching swap meets and junk stores for clocks he can buy inexpensively and fix up. He says the clocks give him something to do with his time and money, something besides drinking.
I've brought some of these clocks back to life for another 100 years. And in the process, I've also given myself extra life. because you can't do these kind of things drunk.
And every hour on the hour, it's as though craftsmen from several ages are saluting his effort and cheering him on. This is Rich Amato reporting.
There's one form of self-help therapy that really seems to be working. In this country, in an interview with reporters from both the Washington Post and Newsweek magazine, Korean President Chun Doo-hwan is quoted as saying that he holds little hope for meaningful progress in talks with the North. President Chun adds that in his view, the communist country is using the talks as part of a strategy to reunify the peninsula by force. Excerpts of the interview appear in today's Korea Herald. Korea's chief executive also says that the Soviet Union is taking a more active military role in Asia and that the republic would be an attractive acquisition to the Soviet strategic designs. The Bank of Korea predicts that the recent sharp drop in the price of crude oil could be a plus for the republic. Yonhap says, according to analysis, if the price of Arabian light crude falls below $20 a barrel, the decline will contribute greatly to improving Korea's international payment balance. Bank of Korea officials add that it's highly probable that crude oil will fall below the $20 mark sometime around April, a low demand month for oil. Now taking a look at other news making headlines on this side of the world, here's AFKN's Roger McDormand.
In Karachi, Pakistan, the second lubrication oil plant belonging to the national oil refinery was inaugurated by the president, General Muhammad Zia-ul Haq. This 2 million rupee joint venture with Romania will make a decisive contribution to the national development and make Pakistan self-sufficient in lubricating oil and asphalt. The president said that Pakistani engineers and technicians had worked shoulder to shoulder with their Romanian colleagues and that a large part of the equipment needed for the plant had been made in Pakistan. An 8-year Sri Lanka government project to develop fisheries on the northwest coast will be completed this year. The project, which began in 1979, concentrates on the development of offshore fishing. Arab aid in the form of fishing gear has been provided, and though, according to a survey, the annual catch from the northwest coast is 70 to 90,000 tons, this was hampered because of a lack of equipment. 32-foot boats have also been provided, which can support 5 men and equipment at sea for about 4 days. Fitted with 56 horsepower engines, these boats can store 3 tons of fish. A zoo in Hiroshima is known in Japan for its unique methods of keeping animals. In that part of the country, the temperatures often drop below the freezing point in winter, but the animals in the zoo have no special heating facilities. This method has been used for the past 15 years, and the animals work out their own ways to survive the cold winter. One good example is provided by chimpanzees and gorillas, which come from one of the hottest places on Earth. A 12-year-old male chimp called Ken has been given a jute bag and bunches of straw for bedding, and the keeper says the way Ken uses them keeps the temperature under the covers 95 degrees. A shortage of water is a big problem for people in the Kashmir Valley during the freezing winter. Even running water turns to ice at sub-zero temperatures, and boatmen have to break ice. But what about the birds? They can neither break the ice or melt it to get water. Birds which flew to Kashmir from the coldest parts of Siberia were near starvation, so the State Wildlife Protection Department has made special arrangements to feed them. The position is no different for deer, the pride of the valley, and those too need special care. Some birds fly to the few places where water is available, but many other animals, like monkeys, are literally left out in the cold. Reporting for AFKN News, I'm Specialist Roger McDormand.
And finally this evening in sports, the Korean national ice hockey team will take on its northern counterpart twice during the upcoming Winter Asian Games in Sapporo, Japan. According to the Korea Herald, the Republic's team will play the team from Pyongyang on March 4th and 8th. In all, a total of 4 teams will be competing in the first Winter Asiad. And that's our report for this Wednesday. I'm Sergeant Ernie Rollag. For Sergeant Marty Sprankle and everyone here at AFKN News, we thank you for joining us and have a nice evening.
The AFKN News Hour, a production of the American Forces Korea Network. In touch with your world.